Welcome back. In this video we are going to implement a feature for which we will require an account at Google, and as you can see the feature will do the following. So when I create a new happy place, once I tap on location, it opens up this window here where I can, for example, search for a specific location, for example for Berlin, or even a whole address. I can enter a whole address there and then it will populate the field here. But in order to get there, we of course need to use the Google Maps API, and therefore we need to create an account or have an account at Google, and you need to log into console.developers.google.com. Therefore you will need a Google account. Once you are logged in, you can select the country you're at, then you can read through the terms of service and agree to them, and then click on agree and continue. Of course, only if you agree with the terms. All right, at this point, you can create a new project. So you can see there are no projects yet in this dashboard that I'm using. So you can go ahead and create a new project, and then you can give it a project name. And I'm just gonna call this one Happy Places 123 and I'm gonna click create. This will then take a little while, and once that is done, you can go ahead and enable APIs and services. So here you can enable a bunch of them. So you can see there are many different APIs that Google offers, and the one that I want to use for this particular example is the Places API. So let's use that. Click on it, and then you can press enable here. Once you're at this screen, you can go to credentials, and then you can create a new credential. So here, credentials in API and services, this is where you can create a new API. So let's create credentials, and I want a new API key. So it's going to create me one, and this is the one that I can then use. And I can copy it and I can directly close or restrict it. So let's restrict it. And for example, it requires you to restrict it in order to prevent unauthorized use and quota left. So if you don't secure your key here and somebody else finds your key, then he can use it. And he can use it for all of his applications, and thousands of users might use it, and then suddenly this will cost you, okay? But usually it can, or it is for free up to a certain point. So for the first few tests and so forth, it's going to be for free, but as soon as you have hundreds of users, then it will be paid. All right, so you can restrict your key, for example, for Android apps, and you can even restrict that for a specific app. So you can go to Android apps here, then add an item, and here you enter the package name. So in my case, the package name of course is this one here. So let's get that and paste it in here. And then the SHA-1 fingerprint certificate. And in order to get the SHA-1 fingerprint here, you can of course use multiple ways, as very often the case. So here there are quite some very complicated steps to do that, but I think the easiest one will probably be, to create a new fragment here. So new fragment and Google Maps fragment. And I'm just gonna create it as is. And here you can find your SHA-1 certificate. So inside of this Google Maps API XML file down there. Just scroll down here and underneath it you will find it. So I'm not going to share it here, but you can just find it there. And then once you pasted it in here, you can press done. And then don't forget to press save. All right, the next thing that you should do is copy this API key and then go over to your values. And here I'm going to create a new string, which I'm gonna call Google _maps_API_key. and I'm going to paste it in here. Next, we need to add a meta tag in our Android manifest. So let's go over there. So here you can already see, because I created this new activity or this fragment, it asks me for my Google Maps key, and well, the value is already there. So metadata, the name and the value here. And in my case, it was Google Maps API key. All right, the next thing we need to do is we need to go to our Gradle, and here we need to add following implementation. So scroll down to the dependencies, and then here I'm going to add another one, which is com.google.android.libraries.places :places:2.1.0. All right, once you have that, you can use the places class, which we will require. So let's go to our add happy place activity, and here inside of the onCreate, I will create if not places dot is initialized, then I want to run some code. So let's make sure that places is imported. And by the way, it will only be visible or available if you build your Gradle. So sync it now. And once it's fully synced, then you can go back to add happy place activity, and now you can import it, because otherwise it's not available. It doesn't know this class here. Okay, now you can see, now it knows it. Now I can import it. Before it wanted to create an abstract class, so if that's the case in your case, then you still need to sync it. All right, now if it's not initialized, then I want to initialize it, and you need to pass in the activity in which you are currently. So add happy place activity, and here you need to pass in the Google Maps API key, and you can get that from the resources.getString, and then r.strings or string dot, and in my case it was Google Maps API key. That's how I called it. All right. So the next thing I will do is in the UI element that we had. So let's go to our UI here. The layout we had in add happy place, our edit text, which was for the location, right? So text input, edit text, TIL date, TIL location. So this one here, I don't want this to be focusable. I want this text field to be non-focusable. Okay, so pretty much just go to the app compat edit text for our location, et location, and then add to 2 lines focusable false, and then focusable in touch mode also to false. So now what I want to happen is not to change the edit text, but I actually want it to be clickable, and then once we click it, then it opens up this places activity, which then allows us to enter a place name. So now let's go back to our add place activity, and here I will add another onClick listener. So we had this button save and so forth, all these onClick listeners, and here I'm gonna do a location set onClick listener. So it's similar to what we did with the date, right? So we didn't want the date to be entered like a text or an edit text usually would be, but we wanted to open up this dialog, which then allows us to enter a date or select a date. And here it's the same with the location, only that now it's not going to be a dialog, but it's going to be this Google Places API tool that we're using. So what we're going to need here at the very bottom is a new constant, because so far we had the constant for gallery, camera, image directory, but we don't have one for our place autocomplete request code. So I'm just going to create a new private const val, which I'm going to call place autocomplete request code, and this one will be 3. And now when I click on the ET location, so onto this or on this edit text, then I want to run some code. So I need to have another entry here just underneath save. So let's go all the way down here. So at this point, r.id.et_location. So once we click on the location, we want to execute some code. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try and get something running here. This can go wrong, and when it does go wrong, I want to catch it with an exception. So I'm just gonna say exception, and it will be a generic exception, e.print stack trace. All right, and now what do I want to try in here? Well, we need to pass in some things. That's generally what Google wants us to do. So when we want to use this feature, we have to use the following structure. So I'm just gonna paste it in here because there's no use in me entering all of that manually. So first of all, we need the fields, which is a list of place field ID, place field name, place field lat long, so latitude and longitude, and place field address. And then we can create the intent, which is autocomplete intent builder, autocomplete activity mode full screen, and then we pass in the fields that we just created, and then we say build that. Okay, and then we start this activity for result with the intent that we just prepared and our request code that we passed in as well, which we called place autocomplete request code. Okay, so it's an activity which pops up on top of our activity, which is this places functionality of Google. And of course, if the request code is our place autocomplete request code, we want to do something on an activity result. So here on activity result, we had these different else ifs, and I need to add another one. So we had one, for example, when it's the camera and we get something back, well, then we want to set the IV place image as this image that was taken with the camera. And now, of course, we want to do something if the request code is going to be the one from our place autocomplete. So when we enter a place and we get something back, well, that's what we want them to display. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this place. So I'm going to create this new place, which will be autocomplete dot get place from intent, and the intent will be our data that is passed to us. So as you know, we are still in an activity result, which gives us request code, result code, and data. So we get those information and we can use them. So what's left here is to set the location, to set text place dot address, and then m latitude to place dot lat long, so latitude and longitude dot latitude. And now the same thing with the longitude, and let L and G needs to be typed correctly, so it's this capital L, and then here m longitude, so we called it, is going to be place dot lat long, and here it's going to be the longitude. Okay, so this was a bunch of stuff that is just how it is. That's how Google designed it, and we just have to go with the flow and use this approach as it is. So this is something that you can of course check out in the documentation and get inspired there, but basically this is what you need to build in order to get the functionality that you've seen earlier on. There's one thing that is quite important to get this running though, and that is that you need to have billing information added here. So at this point you need to have a billing account, and you can link one here, or you can manage your billing accounts, and you can just set one up here. I'm not going to do that in this video, but you just have to go through the process to add a billing account here, because otherwise it will not work. So otherwise this feature will not work in general. Google APIs will not work, even though they give you a lot of it for free, so you can really test around with it for free. But as soon as it comes to having many users, then of course you will have to pay. All right, so that is something that you need to look into. You can learn more about it here. As you can see, you get a free credit in this case of $300, so you can really explore the cloud products and test around quite a bit. And it's going to be free for testing most of the time, but really as soon as it comes to bigger projects which really work well and make money, then it's a different story. Okay, so then of course some things can go wrong, and when things go wrong with this autocomplete load screen or load search results, which we're going to test in a second, then you need to look into those potential solvings. So here, no billing account associated to the project. If you are still using the old Places SDK, you could run into issues, which we don't. Then if the quota limit is reached, which in our case isn't because we haven't even started yet, and if the app is not properly restricted. So that is also something that you can define in the API key settings. Okay, and at that point, coming back to the project, we can start it. And by the way, I want to give you a side note here. I ran into very weird issues here. I had very weird bugs where for me this feature didn't work. And by the way, I'm not using the free API key anymore, so I'm using another one where I actually have something assigned to it, so where I actually had a billing account connected to it. So I ran into this issue here when I pressed the plus button and went to location, and when I entered something, it wouldn't work. So it just wouldn't work. Now you can see it works. So I can just select a location, for example, Berlin, and well, it added this location for me. And you can even go further, so you can really add like the whole address actually. So I don't know, like something like Aachener Straße in Cologne. That's where I used to live. So you could even go that far. All right. And by the way, the issue that I had was something that didn't make any sense. So I copied it and sent it over to my friend, so a project. I sent it over to my friend who tested the project as well. And for him, it worked. For me, it didn't work. All right. So I tested his project. For me, the project worked. And for me, this project still didn't work. So my project still didn't work. So sometimes it's super weird. And what you can do in these cases is you can close your project, and then inside of the project itself, you can delete the Gradle, idea, and build folders, but only once you close the project. And then inside of the app, also this build folder. So delete those 3 folders here. So these 3, and then in the app build as well. So delete them and then restart your application. And then we'll have to do the whole Gradle setup and everything once again. And then it worked for me. So it was not the code, it was not the API key, it was none of that. It was, for whatever reason, a weird bug. And that is something that just happens. And then you just have to go through it. And I hope it works for you directly, but if it doesn't, then try these things, Google around a little bit, and if you still can't figure it out, then of course, write a message in the question and answer section. All right, so I hope really that it worked for you. And then yeah, I think now it's time to go to the next video where we are going to implement the Google Maps features, because so far we used the Places feature, which is cool. So we can get locations, which is great, but we also want to be able to select a spot or set our current location, for example, and also see the location on the map and those kind of things. So that's what we're going to look at in the next video. So see you there.